I'm back in the office for today's video where I want to talk about what I'm doing to better manage my DCS risk while scuba diving. But first, a quick disclaimer, I'm not a dive professional nor technical diver. And spoiler alert, the only recommendation I'm making is to consider making longer safety stops. I'm merely sharing my take on the materials I reference in the comments below and my own personal experience. So, what led me here? Well, over the past few years, I've been hearing about a lot of divers I know suffering from DCS symptoms while they're diving well within the recreational dive limits. Now, many of these divers have more dive experience than myself, and coupled with that, I've been taking more air with me on my dives. I like to do a single dive with a big tank rather than two little dives. Also, on my drive back from when I usually dive on the west side, I come back, I have to go to a minimum altitude of 3,500 feet. So there's an added risk of going to altitude after diving. So I started looking for a better way to manage my DCS risk. I thought that maybe the Teric dive computer would help me out, and I was right. I found two different readings that give me insight into how much risk I am at to DCS. The first one's GF99, which is a current gradient factor of the M line. The second one is surface GF, which tells you while you're diving what your GF99 would be if you went to the surface directly at that moment.
So you may be asking yourself, what is a gradient factor and what is an M line? Gradient factor is the difference in the pressure between the nitrogen dissolved in your tissues versus the ambient pressure, expressed as a percentage of the M value line. Now, the M value line is a model-based calculation of when DCS symptoms begin to present for average divers. Shearwater has a great posting on the internet going into quite some depth on this topic. I've included a link to the article in the description of this video. The article also references a PDF explaining more about the M line. My favorite quote in the article is, "It may be more appropriate to describe the M value as a solid line drawn through a fuzzy gray area," and then references figure 2, which I'm sharing here. I love this description because it accurately reflects both the explicit value of the model calculation as well as the range of DCS suspectability between divers and other DCS risk factors that a dive computer can have no knowledge of. As you can see in this picture, I've set up my Teric to display both of those values. I set my layout to standard and then set the home screen to have two values. I was able to intuitively make those changes, but of course you can always consult the user's guide. My computer came set up with a conservatism setting of 40/85. This means my NDL limits are calculated so that at any time I ascend to the surface, I will have a GF99 value of 85% or less once I surface. The 40% GF is used to determine the depth of my mandatory stop for a deco dive. When you start your dive, you have a negative gradient factor, and the Teric displays a value of on gas for the GF99 value. You don't get a positive value until you start to ascend. Now keep in mind that you have to have a positive GF99 value at some point in your dive to order to off gas. The key is to manage this value so that you safely off gas. For the remainder of this video, I'm going to show my computer logs from two different dives. Unfortunately, the value for surf GF is not captured in the log. My first dive shows a typical recreation dive for me. I'm at my highest nitrogen loading and I was down to 3 minutes of no decompression time. My indicated surf GF value would have been less than 85%, but likely more than 80%. After I reach a safety stop depth, the GF99 value of 14% indicates that I'm safely off gassing. After I completed a 5-minute safety stop, my GF99 value is lowered and my surface GF value is likely a little under 75%. At the surface, I finished my dive with a GF99 value of 72%. By definition, the surf GF value is the same as the GF99 value at the surface. This next dive is a rare dive where I went into deco. I thought this would be a good example of extreme nitrogen loading and how spending more time at a safety stop depth reduces my risk to DCS. This is a boat dive where we anchored in about 60 feet of water and everything we're looking at was about the same depth. Keep in mind that I typically dive with over 120 cubic feet of air, so I can easily afford the extra time underwater for a mandatory stop. This would have been a very risky dive with a typical 80 cubic foot tank. Shot shows the moment I go into deco. You can see I have a mandatory stop at 10 feet for 1 minute, and I'm still on gassing. My surface GF value would have been at 85% based upon my computer settings. This is the moment that I transition to off gassing. My mandatory stop time has increased to 8 minutes. This time I'm performing my mandatory stop. During my ascent, my mandatory stop time went from 8 minutes down to 5 minutes. The mandatory stop didn't have a timer like a normal safety stop on my watch, so this confused me a little bit, so I briefly went to 10 feet to try and trigger the timer. Here I've completed the remainder of my 5-minute mandatory stop at around 15 feet. At this point, my surface GF value would have been lowered to 85%. Once I completed my mandatory stop, I did a 5-minute safety stop. I seem to remember that my surface GF was around 80% at this point. Still over 800 psi, I decided to wait until my surface GF was further reduced to 75%. It took about 3 minutes, and then I did a slow final ascent where my gradient factor ended the dive at 73%. So as you can see, no matter how much you're loaded within recreational dive limits, you can increase your safety factor just by hanging out at the safety stop.
So for my way home, I've been monitoring my GF99 readings when I come from the other side of the island. The Teric detects the changes in the atmospheric pressure on the drive home and reflects that in the GF99 reading. As I drive up the hill, I see the GF99 value slowly increase and then decrease as I head downhill. At 3,500 feet, the highest GF99 value I've seen is around 40%, and that's well below the value I surfaced with. Typically, the time it takes to pack up after a dive makes for a good surface interval, and I see values of 15% or lower. So to wrap things up, I would recommend getting the surf GF value displayed if you're diving with a Teric dive computer like myself. Seeing your current GF99 value is nice, but it's the surface GF value that helps you manage your risk while you're underwater and can still do something about it. And no matter what dive computer you're using, don't be afraid to increase your safety stop by an extra 3 to 5 minutes if you've got the air for it. You can easily increase your safety factor by 5 to 10% by doing this. And there's no trophy waiting for you on the boat bringing back extra air. Just make sure you get enough to finish the dive successfully and safely. Thank you.